Why do we react so strongly? Have you ever noticed how a single comment, sometimes just a few careless words, can disturb the peace of our entire day? It might be something as small as a colleague's tone of voice, a family member's passing remark, or even the look on a stranger's face. Yet somehow it can stay with us, replaying in our mind again and again, making us angry, hurt, or insecure. Why does this happen? Why do such small moments have the power to trigger such big storms inside us? The Buddhist teaching gives us a very clear answer. It is not the outside world that truly causes our suffering. It is not really the words spoken, nor the expression we see, that has the power to wound us. Rather, it is our own mind, the way it clings, grasps, and reacts, that creates the pain we feel. Think of it like this. If someone hands you a burning coal, you only get burned if you hold on to it. If you simply let it drop, there is no injury. In the same way, when someone's words or actions come toward us, they only hurt when our mind grabs hold of them, turns them over, and builds stories around them. But letting go is not easy, is it? Because our mind often wants to hold on. It says, "How dare they speak to me like that?" Or "Why don't they respect me?" And before we realize it, we are caught in anger, resentment, or self-doubt. Here we see the heart of the Buddhist teaching. Suffering does not come from what others do. It arises from how we meet it. When our mind clings to an idea of me and mine, every little word or gesture feels personal. Every small ripple feels like a threat to our identity. Imagine standing by a lake. If the surface of the water is calm, you can see the sky clearly reflected. But if the water is full of waves, the reflection becomes broken and unclear. Our mind is like that lake. When it is agitated by clinging and reaction, we lose clarity. When it is still, we can see deeply and respond wisely. And so, the Buddha invites us to ask a simple but profound question. What if the storm is not outside of me, but inside? This question changes everything, because if the storm is inside, then the power to calm it also lies inside. We no longer have to depend on other people changing or the world becoming easier. Freedom becomes possible, right here, right now, in the midst of life's storms. So the next time you feel triggered, pause for a moment. Notice what is really happening. Is it the comment itself, or is it the mind holding on to it? Is it the look you received, or the story you tell yourself about what that look means? When we begin to see this clearly, something opens up. Instead of being pushed and pulled by every passing remark, we start to find space within ourselves. A spaciousness where peace, compassion, and wisdom can grow. And this is where our journey begins. The journey of understanding the mind, the journey of seeing how suffering arises, and most importantly, the journey of realizing that freedom is possible. The nature of emotional reactivity, fire from friction. Emotions themselves are not the enemy. Anger, jealousy, sadness, or hurt. These are simply part of the human experience. They arise naturally, just like clouds drift across the sky. The difficulty begins not with the emotions themselves, but with the way we relate to them. When anger arises, for example, we often feel, "This is me. I am angry." We make the emotion personal, as though it defines our very identity. But the Buddha pointed out that this is a misunderstanding. Emotions are passing conditions, not the essence of who we are. Think of it like striking flint against stone. When they meet, sparks naturally appear. That is simply the law of nature. In the same way, when our senses meet the world, when words are spoken, when looks are exchanged, when memories surface, sparks of emotion may arise. There is nothing inherently wrong with this. But here's where the real challenge begins. A spark on its own dies out quickly. If we drop that spark into dry grass, or keep blowing on it, it becomes a flame. And if we continue to pile on wood and fuel, that flame grows into a fire that can consume everything in its path. This is exactly how emotional reactivity works. A spark of irritation may arise when someone cuts us off in traffic. If we simply notice it, it fades. But if we start replaying the story, how dare he? People are so rude. I never get the respect I deserve. Then we are feeding that spark. We are throwing on fuel, turning it into a fire of anger that can burn inside us for hours, sometimes even days. Or take jealousy. A simple spark might arise when we see someone else succeed in a way we wish we had. That moment of comparison is natural. But if we begin to dwell on it, to rehearse thoughts like, why them and not me? Life is unfair. We keep feeding the flame until it fills us with bitterness. The Buddhist teaching helps us see that the emotion itself is not the problem. The spark is natural. What matters is whether we choose to feed it. When we replay the story, defend our ego, or assign blame, we are blowing air into the flame. The fire spreads. But if we allow the spark to arise and pass without clinging to it, something different happens. Just as a spark that lands on wet ground fizzles out, emotions that are not fueled by endless thought and reaction fade on their own. This is not suppression, it is wisdom. Suppression is pushing emotions away with force, pretending they do not exist. Wisdom is recognizing this is just a passing spark. I don't need to build a fire around it. Notice how freeing this is. You don't need to fight your emotions. You don't need to fear them. You don't need to identify with them. All that's needed is the understanding that emotions are sparks, and you are not obligated to keep them burning. Over time, with practice, this shift becomes natural. We start to see emotions for what they are, temporary visitors, not permanent residents. And when we stop feeding them, they come and go like waves on the shore. This is the beginning of freedom. Realizing that our suffering doesn't come from the spark itself, but from the way we keep adding fuel to it. And when we stop, the fire cannot last. The role of perception, how we interpret the world. In Buddhism, perception, called sana in Pali, is one of the 5 aggregates or the 5 aspects that make up human experience. Perception is the process by which we recognize, label, and interpret the world around us. Think about this for a moment. 2 people can stand side by side, witnessing the very same event, and yet their experiences can feel like night and day. Why? Because perception is not a mirror that reflects reality exactly as it is. It is more like a pair of glasses, tinted by our past experiences, our memories, and even our current mood. For example, imagine 2 friends walking together in a park. A sudden gust of wind comes, shaking the branches overhead. One person might immediately feel a sense of delight. Ah, how refreshing, how alive the world feels. The other might shrink in discomfort, worrying that a branch could fall or that the weather is about to turn bad. The same wind, the same moment, but 2 very different inner worlds. This shows us something profound. What hurts, or what comforts us, is not simply what happened. It is the meaning that our mind assigns to it. The event itself is like a seed, but the soil of our perception determines whether it grows into fear, into joy, or perhaps into nothing at all. In daily life, this process happens constantly, often without us noticing. Someone gives us a look. Immediately, perception interprets it. We might think they are angry with me, or they are judging me. Another person, receiving the same look, might think, "Oh, they must be tired," and move on. The look itself is neutral, but the stories we build around it shape our entire emotional response. The Buddha taught this not to make us feel guilty about how our minds work, but to help us see that perception is not fixed. It is fluid, changeable, and conditioned. And this means that with awareness, we have the power to reshape it. Let's use another metaphor. Think of perception like a painter with a brush. Reality gives us the canvas, bare and open, but it is perception that adds the colors, the strokes, the shadows, the brightness. When we forget this, we mistake the painting for the whole truth. We argue, suffer, and cling to the idea that this is exactly how things are. But when we remember that perception is painting the picture, we become less attached to our interpretation. We can step back, breathe, and allow space for other perspectives. And here lies the gentle wisdom of the Dharma. When we loosen our grip on perception, we also loosen the intensity of our suffering. We begin to see that our pain is not always caused directly by the world, but by the lens through which we view it. This does not mean we deny real difficulties or pretend everything is fine. Rather, it means we understand that our inner response is shaped not only by what happens, but also by how we perceive what happens. So the next time you feel hurt by a word, a look, or a situation, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what story is my perception telling me right now? Could there be another way to see this? Could my interpretation be only one of many possible views? This simple reflection opens a doorway. It softens the tight grip of the mind. And in that space, compassion can arise, both for ourselves and for others. Because we realize, just as my perception colors my world, so too does there's color theirs. We are all living in our own painted landscapes, sometimes beautiful, sometimes painful, but never permanent and never absolute. By seeing perception clearly, we begin to walk closer to freedom, the freedom to respond with wisdom rather than to react out of habit. The root of clinging, mistaking feelings for self. When someone insults us, it may seem obvious that the hurt we feel comes directly from their words. But if we pause and look more carefully, we discover that the sound itself is not the real problem. Words are vibrations in the air, just sounds moving through space. If we did not understand the language, those words would mean nothing at all. They would pass by like the sound of the wind. So where, then, does the pain arise? The hurt arises because the mind instantly ties those sounds to the idea of me. We think they're attacking me. They're disrespecting me. They are hurting my pride. That moment of identification is where suffering takes root. The Buddha often pointed out that the sense of I and mine is like a glue that binds us to pain. It is not the words that wound us. It is our clinging to the notion of a solid, permanent self that feels attacked. Think about a mirror. If someone stood before a mirror and shouted angry words, would the mirror be harmed? No, the mirror simply reflects. But when we mistake our fleeting thoughts and feelings for a fixed self, we stop being like the mirror. We grasp, we react, and suddenly the insult burns. What does this mean that we are defending so fiercely? When we look closer, we find it is not a single, unchanging thing. It is a constantly shifting bundle of sensations, emotions, thoughts, and perceptions. One moment we are happy, the next moment sad. One moment we feel strong, the next fragile. None of these experiences stay. They rise and pass away like clouds drifting across the sky. But when we forget this truth, we treat these shifting experiences as if they form a solid identity. We cling to the idea that this is who I am. And from that place of clinging, every passing comment, every judgment, every small insult feels like a threat to our very existence. It is like tying your sense of worth to a balloon in the wind. The moment the wind shifts, the balloon is carried away, and you are left chasing after it in desperation. In the same way, when our self-worth is tied to the fragile idea of I and mine, we hand over our peace to whatever others say or think. But there is another way. The Buddha encouraged us to see clearly that what we call self is not fixed, not solid, not something we can truly hold. It is a flow of experiences, always changing. When we begin to see this, the grip of clinging loosens. Insults lose their power because there is no rigid me to be injured. Praise, too, loses its intoxicating hold because there is no permanent me to inflate. This is not about denying our feelings or pretending we are unaffected. Feelings will still arise: anger, hurt, sadness. But instead of letting them harden into "this is me, this is who I am," we can see them as passing visitors. They come, they stay for a while, and they go. Just as clouds pass through the sky without staining it, feelings pass through the mind when we don't cling. And this shift, gentle as it may seem, is the beginning of freedom. It is the freedom of no longer being tossed around by every word, every opinion, every fleeting judgment. When we see through the illusion of a solid self, the world still moves, but the heart rests in a deeper peace. So the next time someone's words sting, take a breath and remember, it is not the sound that wounds. It is the clinging to I and mine. Let the words be like echoes in an empty valley, passing, fading, unable to touch the stillness of the space itself. That stillness is always here, waiting beneath the noise of the world. Mindfulness as the turning point, observing without fueling. At this point, we come to the heart of the practice, mindfulness. Mindfulness, in the Buddhist tradition, is called sati in Pali. At its core, it is the simple yet profound act of being aware of what is happening in the present moment. When an emotion arises, whether it is anger, sadness, fear, or joy, mindfulness does not push it away, nor does it cling to it. Instead, it simply watches. It is like a gentle witness that sees things as they are, without judgment, without preference. Think of emotions like waves on the surface of the ocean. Some waves are small and almost unnoticeable. Others are tall and powerful, crashing with great force. Without mindfulness, we may feel as though we're being tossed around by every wave, dragged under by their intensity. But with mindfulness, we learn that we are not the wave. We are the vast ocean that holds it. The wave rises, moves, and eventually fades. The ocean remains. Another way to see this is through the image of the sky. Emotions are like clouds, sometimes white and light, sometimes dark and heavy. Without awareness, we may feel trapped beneath those dark clouds, believing they define our entire world. But mindfulness reminds us that behind every cloud, the sky is still clear, open, and untouched. Clouds pass, the sky remains. This practice may sound simple, but it transforms the way we relate to suffering. Normally, when anger arises, we feed it with thoughts. I should not have been treated this way. How dare they speak to me like that? Each thought adds more fuel to the fire. The emotion, instead of dissolving, grows stronger and lasts longer. But when mindfulness steps in, the cycle changes. We notice, anger has arisen. We don't say, I am angry, as though anger is our identity. Instead, we see anger as just a passing visitor. We watch it, acknowledge it, and allow it to move on. In this way, mindfulness is like taking the fuel away from a burning fire. A fire that is not fed will naturally burn itself out. Similarly, emotions that are not constantly fueled by our judgments and stories will lose their grip on us. This does not mean we become cold or indifferent. Mindfulness is not suppression. It is a warm, compassionate awareness, one that allows every experience to be seen clearly, yet without being consumed by it. It is like sitting by the riverside, watching the water flow. The river carries leaves, branches, sometimes even debris. But we remain seated on the bank, calm and steady, simply watching the stream pass by. And with time, something remarkable happens. The emotions themselves begin to teach us. We see their nature, that they arise due to conditions, stay for a while, and inevitably pass. We realize they are not permanent, not solid, not who we truly are. This insight is the seed of liberation. So, every time mindfulness arises, even for a brief moment, we take a step out of the cycle of clinging and reacting. We reclaim our freedom, one moment at a time. Mindfulness, then, is not just a technique, it is the turning point. It is the moment where suffering no longer dictates our lives. It is the gentle power that allows us to live with greater clarity, compassion, and peace. Cultivating inner stability, the unshakable mind. When mindfulness deepens and becomes steady, something beautiful begins to take shape within us. The mind gradually settles, like a lake no longer stirred by constant winds. This inner stillness is not forced, and it is not a dull emptiness. It is a natural stability, a quiet strength that grows when we stop clinging to every passing thought and emotion. Imagine a mountain. No matter how strong the winds blow, the mountain does not move. The clouds may gather around it, storms may cover its peak, yet the mountain remains rooted, unmoved, and serene. In the same way, when awareness is steady, our mind becomes like that mountain. Life will still bring difficulties. Words may still be spoken that sting, and situations may still arise that test our patience. But instead of being pulled and tossed about like a leaf in the wind, we rest in something deeper, a grounded presence that cannot be shaken. This does not mean we no longer feel anything. The stable mind is not a frozen or numb mind. It still feels joy and sorrow, tenderness and pain. But just as the mountain is not carried away by the wind, the mind is not carried away by emotions. Feelings are experienced fully and honestly, yet without the desperate need to hold on to them or push them away. Think of a candle flame in a quiet room. When there is no wind, the flame burns steadily, softly lighting the space. But when gusts of air rush in, the flame flickers wildly, sometimes almost going out. In the same way, a mind without stability flickers with every change in circumstances, every word of praise, every look of disapproval, every wave of fear or desire. But a stable mind, like the flame in still air, shines steadily, providing light to ourselves and to others. This stability is not something distant or unreachable. It is cultivated each time we practice awareness in daily life. When someone cuts us off in traffic, can we notice the rising heat of irritation, take a breath, and let it pass without being consumed? When disappointment arises, can we gently observe it instead of drowning in it? Every small moment of mindfulness strengthens the roots of this unshakable mountain within us. The Buddha often compared the well-trained mind to a strong tree with deep roots. Even if the storm shakes its branches, the tree does not fall. Our practice of mindfulness and understanding is like deepening those roots. When roots are shallow, even a small wind can topple the tree. But when the roots reach deep into the soil of wisdom and compassion, no storm of life can uproot it. This inner stability does not make us detached from life. Rather, it allows us to live more fully. When we're not tossed around by every passing emotion, we can respond to life with clarity instead of reaction. We listen more deeply, we speak more carefully, and we act with greater kindness. Instead of being pulled by anger or fear, we can choose patience, understanding, and compassion. This is the freedom of the unshakable mind. So as we walk the path, let us remember, stability is not built in one day. Like the mountain formed over centuries, it grows gradually with each moment of mindful awareness. Each breath, each step, each act of letting go helps shape a mind that is vast, steady, and free. And when the winds of life blow again, as they surely will, we may find ourselves standing like the mountain, still, grounded, and at peace. Compassion arises naturally, responding instead of reacting. When the storms of our own anger, fear, or hurt begin to quiet down, something very natural and very human begins to appear: compassion. It does not need to be forced. It does not need to be manufactured. It arises on its own, the way a flower blooms once the winter frost has melted. Often, when we are caught up in strong emotions, our view of others becomes clouded. We see them only as the source of our pain, or as obstacles in our way. In those moments, it is difficult to see their humanity. But as mindfulness and stability grow in our hearts, the fog begins to clear. We start to notice that others, too, are suffering. Just like us, they also carry fears, disappointments, and wounds. Imagine a person shouting at us in anger. Our first impulse may be to shout back, to defend ourselves, or to shut down completely. But when the mind is no longer pulled around by its old habits, a different possibility opens. Instead of asking, "Why are they attacking me?" we may gently wonder, what pain are they carrying that makes them act this way? This shift is the seed of compassion. Compassion in Buddhism is not pity. It is not looking down on others or thinking we are somehow better. Compassion is the natural recognition that suffering is a shared human experience. It is the softening of the heart that understands. Just as I want to be free from pain, so do they. When this understanding arises, our responses change. We no longer react blindly, adding more fuel to conflict. Instead, we pause. That pause is very powerful. It allows us to respond instead of react. Responding means bringing wisdom and kindness into the moment. Sometimes a response is a gentle word that calms the situation. Other times, it may simply be silence, choosing not to escalate. And in some cases, it may involve setting clear boundaries, but doing so with respect rather than hostility. The difference is not in the outer action, but in the quality of the heart from which it comes. We can think of it like holding a small candle in a dark room. When someone else is stumbling in that darkness, we do not need to scold them. We can simply hold up the candle, and the light itself helps them see more clearly. Our compassion is that light. This doesn't mean we will never feel anger again, or that we must become saints overnight. Compassion is not about perfection, it is about direction. Each time we choose to respond with awareness instead of react out of habit, we are strengthening compassion within ourselves. Over time, this becomes more natural, more steady. And compassion is not only for others. When we practice responding instead of reacting, we also learn to treat ourselves with kindness. When we stumble, when we make mistakes, instead of harshly judging ourselves, we can pause and respond with understanding. Yes, I struggled here. And just as others deserve compassion, so do I. This balance, compassion for self and compassion for others, is what allows the heart to remain open, even in difficult times. So, in the practice of mindfulness and stability, compassion is not something added from outside. It blossoms naturally, like a lotus opening in the sunlight. And when it blossoms, our life changes. Our words, our choices, our very presence become sources of healing rather than harm. In this way, compassion is not only a gift to others, it is also a gift to ourselves, freeing us from the endless cycle of reaction and regret, and guiding us into a life of clarity, wisdom, and peace. Living this teaching daily, small practices for freedom. So how can we live this teaching not just as an idea, but as a way of life? It often begins not with grand efforts, but with very small, gentle steps that we weave into our ordinary days. These small practices may seem simple, but their effect, over time, is profound. Let's look at a few of them more closely. The first practice is pausing before reacting. When emotions rise, whether it is irritation in traffic, disappointment in a relationship, or frustration at work, our usual habit is to react immediately. The mind leaps forward like a spark catching dry grass, and before we know it, words are spoken or actions are taken that cannot be taken back. But if, in that moment, we give ourselves just a little pause, even a few seconds, we create a space between the trigger and our response. In that space lies freedom. It is like holding the reins of a wild horse, not with force, but with steadiness, so that it does not drag us away. The second practice is taking one conscious breath. Breathing is so ordinary that we often overlook its power, but a single mindful breath can bring the mind home. It is like dropping an anchor into turbulent waters. The waves may still be there, but the boat no longer drifts uncontrollably. When we feel anger, fear, or restlessness rising, we can simply inhale, aware that this is an in-breath, and exhale, aware that this is an out-breath. This moment of awareness interrupts the storm of reactivity, giving us clarity to see more deeply what is happening inside. The third practice is reflecting on impermanence. the Buddha often reminded us, all conditioned things are impermanent. Every feeling, whether joy or sorrow, excitement or despair, arises, stays for a while, and passes away. When we remember this truth, we don't cling so tightly to pleasant feelings, nor do we drown in unpleasant ones. We begin to trust that, just as clouds move across the sky, so too will this anger, this sadness, this fear. It doesn't mean we push our emotions away. It simply means we hold them more lightly, knowing they're guests who will not stay forever. The fourth practice is treating every emotional trigger as a chance to deepen practice. This is a radical shift. Normally, we see difficult moments as problems to get rid of, but in Dharma, they can become our teachers. When someone criticizes us, instead of only feeling hurt, we can ask, what is this teaching me about my attachment to praise? When we feel jealousy, we can reflect, what does this reveal about my tendency to compare? In this way, life itself becomes our training ground, and every situation, even the painful ones, becomes an invitation to grow in wisdom and compassion. These four small practices, pausing, breathing, remembering impermanence, and learning from triggers, may seem simple, but if we repeat them day after day, something changes quietly within us. Little by little, we are no longer pushed around by life's ups and downs. Our happiness no longer depends entirely on external conditions, because we have discovered a deeper stability inside. This, the Buddha taught, is true freedom. Not freedom from life's challenges, but freedom in how we meet them. Not freedom from emotions, but freedom from being ruled by them. It is the freedom of a mind that knows its own nature, clear, steady, and vast like the open sky. Thank you for listening and reflecting with me today. May these small practices bring you peace and strength in your daily life. This has been another episode of the Buddha Light Podcast. I invite you to join me again next time as we continue exploring the timeless teachings of the Buddha and how they can guide us gently, step by step, toward greater wisdom and compassion.